what I've learned in previous class, I wanted to recall or memorize is about microorganisms, about microscopes, microbiology, what I've learned yesterday, and what mean by bacteria and their typical structures. As you know, bacteria is one of a prokaryotic, a microscopic unicellular non-nucleated organism. This is one of a typical features of bacteria, and they have their own mode of nutrition. Their mode of nutrition is autotrophic and heterotrophic, but most of bacteria are heterotrophic except blue-green algae or cyanobacteria. Those are what of the lesson what we have discussed yesterday. In today's lesson, we are going to discuss the next 2 and 3 type of microorganisms, which are called virus and yeast. The objective of today's lesson is, after completing this section, you will be able to explain the difference between virus and yeast with their typical structures, and to able to identify their typical harmfulness and usefulness in our lifetime. Let's start from the lesson. The first one is virus. Virus, they are even smaller than a bacteria. They are too small than bacteria. As you know, bacteria is smaller than plant cell and animal cell. So virus is smaller than both plant cell and animal cell and bacteria. Bacteria is larger than virus. So virus is smaller, and it is firstly identified in 1898 by having a person which is mainly known as Benjernik, which is Martinus Benjernik. This is a biologist that can identify this virus, and he named as a poisonous fluid. Virus means a poisonous fluid in Latin. From Latin word, virus is a poisonous fluid. This virus usually have a regular geometric shape and made up of a protein coat, which is surrounded by a genetic material having genes. And one of the protein coats that can surround a virus is called a capsid. Capsid is an outer cover that can protect the virus. This virus is not grouped under kingdom classification, because to be grouped, it must undergo the 7 life process. So virus only undergoes reproduction. So it's absent for those 6 life process, which are known as nutrition, growth, movement, irritability, and so on, what I've learned in chapter 2. So this virus is not classified under kingdom classification because of the lack of 6 life process, and they do not carry out any functions of normal living organisms, only reproduction. They can only reproduce by taking over another the living cell or the host cell. As far as we know, all naturally occurring viruses can cause a disease. So all are pathogens. Virus all are pathogens, and this virus have many geometric shape, and some have a round shape with a small tail. Let's say tobacco mosaic virus is a virus that can attack tobacco plant, which has rod shape. So those viruses are much smaller than most living cells, and their composition is and their structure is, each virus particle contains its own few genetic material surrounded by a protein coat. This genetic material can be DNA or RNA, but not both. It does not contain the two. In contrast, most cells contain both DNA and RNA. This is a unique feature or exceptional features for virus. The genetic material is in the center or core of virus, and the protein coat surrounding the core is called a capsid. The capsid determines its shape, and it is important to protect the DNA or the RNA. So this virus is mainly classified or named as an acronymical word, which is called acellular, obligate, intracellular, a microscopic, prokaryotic, and a parasitic organism. Acellular means that it's found in between living and non-living as a boundary. Obligate, viruses do not ask any permission to enter. Intracellular means once they can get into the host cell, they are found inside the cell. And microscopic, they are teeny, too small. It tells about the size. And prokaryotic, they lack a nucleus and takes the host cell as a nucleus. And parasitic means they are dependent on the host cell function. Viruses get the 6 life process from the host cell, and they only undergoes reproduction, the last step of one of the 7 life process known as reproduction. Due to this reason, they are named as parasitic. When it comes to this virus, how these viruses are mainly multiply, viruses have no any sign of life outside the cell. It does not multiply or grow or respire. Viruses become active inside the host cell, so all viruses are parasitic. Viruses, however, do not obtain nourishment from their host cell. They do not have the vital process of living thing, metabolism, respiration, growth, and so on. Viruses do not reproduce like living things do, and instead a virus replicates by taking over its host cell's chemical machinery for making nucleic acid and proteins. A virus's ability to cause a serious disease is called a virulence. And those viruses are not classified in the 5 kingdom systems. All viruses cause a disease such as AIDS, polio, smallpox, rabies, common cold, influenza, measles, and mumps are transmitted by droplet infection. Smallpox is transferred by contact with infected person, and rabies is transferred by the bite of animal which has rabies, and the polio is airborne, foodborne, and waterborne, which cause a paralysis and a muscle wasting. AIDS is caused by HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, and mainly Ebola virus is also one of the typical type of virus which is extremely dangerous, and it can cause a disease to human being. To investigate this type of virus, science should take extreme safety measures. Not only Ebola virus, nowadays it is a devastating and a dramatic affected virus is the so-called pandemic disease, which is known as COVID-19 or coronavirus. This coronavirus also needs extreme safety measures. Why? Because it is easily transferred by infected inhalation of air, if any contact. So if we don't have any personal hygiene, it's easily transmitted from one person to other person. So now COVID-19 is one of also the main typical virus, and mainly those viruses have their own body plan. The structures of virus, at the center there is a genetic material which is not contained in the nucleus, and the outer part there is a capsid, which is an outer protective part, and next to capsid there is a protein coat. It's the main machinery or genetic machinery. So these are a typical structures of virus. Again, virus, it is size is too small, mainly accounts from 0.01 micrometer up to 0.1 micrometer, which is smaller than bacteria. Why? Because bacteria have around 0.1 up to 10 micrometers it is size. So viruses are smaller in their size, and the content at the center there is a genetic material, either DNA or RNA. There is envelope or an outer membrane from the host cell and a protein coat. This is a typical structures of virus. And let's see one of the typical structures of HIV virus. This HIV virus have the same like that of the other virus, have genetic material. They do have enzyme molecules, a glycoprotein head. They do have antigens. They do have a core shell, central core, genetic material. They do have also a lipid membrane, which have mainly a role in replication part. So this HIV structure is mainly structured as a cocktail shaped or spherical shaped. This is all about virus. The next type of microorganisms, or the third type of microorganism, is also called a yeast cell. This a yeast cell is mainly grouped under one of a kingdom, the so-called kingdom fungi. This kingdom fungi is not grouped under plant kingdom because they do not photosynthesize their food. about this kingdom is contains thousands of species. This is their size is that of a single-celled yeast, and most of the kingdom fungi were eukaryotic and multicellular, but yeast is a single-celled organism and eukaryotic. And this kingdom fungi are heterotrophic, they depend on one another. Mainly of them are saprotrophs, which means that they feed on dead material. Some fungi are mutualistic, they found with a mutualistic relationship, like fungi plus algae, which can a symbiotic relationship mutualism. Both can benefit, and this plays a role as a decomposer in the ecosystem, fungus. And these fungus are either parasitic or saprophytic, and most of their fungal cell wall is made up of chitin, which is a nitrogen containing a polysaccharide. And this fungus is commonly reproduced sexually and asexually. But when it comes to the yeast cell is one of grouped under a kingdom fungi of division, the so-called division Ascomycota, or having the so-called sac fungi. This about around 30,000 species were found, and this sac fungi or Ascomycota have an hyphae. Hyphae is a trail-like structure that are found in the fungus, and this sac fungi have spore-producing asci parts, and the mode of habitat is in plants, and it's decaying plant matters, and they can reproduce asexually by having budding, and sexually by this called ascospores or sporulation. This is a typical type of fungus is known as a yeast. Not only yeast is plus penicillium. Penicillium is producing a drug penicillin. This is also a fungus which is grouped under division Ascomycota. So yeasts are single-celled or unicellular, and each yeast cell have a nucleus, cytoplasm, and cell membrane surrounded by a cell wall. The yeast main way of reproduction is asexually by budding, by splitting it into to form new yeast cell. And yeasts are extremely important as decomposers, breaking down of animal and plant matter and returning into the nutrients to the environment, which means that they play a role in the nutrient cycling. And this yeast cell have their own typical structures. The new forming bud forming cell is the first part, and the second one is one of the matured yeast cell part, having cell membrane, cell wall. The central part have nucleus and cytoplasm. This is the typical structures of yeast. So what makes different yeast to that of what you have seen bacteria and the virus is yeast contains nucleus, but virus and bacteria may lack a nucleus. This is all about virus and yeast. If you have any question, welcome. If there is no question, thank you for your attentive listening. Bye bye.